What if the person guarding the vault is the one secretly taking instructions on what not to let out? Because that's the frame here, and no, this is not a normal hearing, not even close. This is a controlled exposure of how power tries to edit reality in real time, and at the center of it is Donald Trump and the one person who was supposed to stand between him and the law, Pam Bondi. 14 calls. Not one heated moment, not one bad decision. 14 separate recorded attempts to slow down, reshape, and contain the release of Epstein-related files. And here's the question that should bother you immediately. If there was nothing to hide, why wasn't the instruction, release it fast? Why was it, keep it slow? Bondi doesn't walk into Congress with opinions. She walks in with timestamps, durations, and content logs, a legal trail that doesn't just suggest pressure, but maps it, step by step, from November through February. And what's said matters, but what's not said matters more. No direct denial of involvement. No urgency for transparency. Just delay, redact, protect. So this isn't about politics anymore. This is about whether the system itself was being quietly rewritten, call by call, instruction by instruction, while the public was told everything was under control. Now shift the lens from headlines to sequence, because in any serious case, sequence is where intent stops hiding and starts repeating. November 15th, 2025. According to Pam Bondi, Donald Trump makes the first call, framing the Epstein files as politically sensitive, not legally urgent, not publicly necessary, politically sensitive, and right there, the motive begins to drift. 1 week later, November 22nd, he calls again, not to ask what the law requires, but to check the pace, and the instruction is simple, almost casual. Good, keep it slow. And that's not legal language, that's control language. December arrives, pressure builds from courts and Congress, and suddenly the vocabulary changes. Now it's executive privilege, now it's national security, now it sounds legal. But look closely, because the timing of that language only appears after external pressure increases, which raises a critical question. Is the law guiding the decision, or is the law being used to justify a delay already decided? January, February. The pattern stabilizes, call after call, check after check, and then it escalates beyond timing into targeting, specific names flagged, specific references marked, instructions that move from slow it down to filter this out. And here's what is said: protect, redact, hold. But here's what is never said: release everything. That silence matters. Because in any honest process, transparency is the default, not the exception. So when transparency disappears from the conversation entirely, replaced only by methods of delay and control, you're no longer looking at caution. You're looking at design. And this is where the story stops being about delay and starts being about direction. Because once you move from slow it down to protect specific names, you are no longer managing a process, you are shaping an outcome, and that is a completely different legal universe. According to Pam Bondi, there wasn't just pressure around documents, there was a second layer, quieter, more dangerous, a document that never faced public scrutiny until now, a list. Names written down, not as subjects of investigation based on evidence, but as targets in search of evidence, and among them were figures like Adam Schiff, James Comey, and Michael Cohen. And the instruction wasn't review their actions. It was find something. Think about that for a second. Not find the truth, not follow the evidence, but find something, anything, a tax issue, a procedural slip, a technical violation, whatever could be turned into a charge. That reversal matters, because in a functioning justice system, evidence leads to prosecution. Here, according to testimony, prosecution was expected to lead to evidence. That is not just a legal gray zone, that is the blueprint of abuse. Bondi says she refused, not dramatically, not politically, but procedurally, stating the obvious line that should never need to be said out loud: you cannot prosecute without evidence. And that's the moment everything snaps. April 2nd, she's fired. Not after a scandal, not after a leak, not after a mistake, but after drawing a boundary. Now pause and stack the sequence again, slowly, clearly, because this is where the pressure becomes undeniable. 14 calls to delay documents. Repeated instructions to redact and protect. A separate push to target political opponents. A refusal grounded in law. Termination. That is not random behavior. That is a decision structure. And then comes the pivot that turns this from internal pressure into public exposure. April 7th, Bondi testifies under oath. April 8th, the testimony is leaked. And the timing is not incidental, it's surgical, because it lands exactly as millions of Epstein-related documents begin to surface, as Congress escalates impeachment discussions, as legal pressure converges from multiple directions. This is not someone venting. This is someone releasing a record into a moment designed to amplify it. And buried inside that record is the line that changes everything, the line that shifts the entire narrative from association to awareness. I knew what Jeffrey was up to. If that statement is accurate, then the entire defense architecture collapses. Because now you are no longer arguing ignorance. You are confronting knowledge. And in law, knowledge transforms silence into complicity, transforms delay into intent, transforms a series of phone calls into a coordinated strategy to control what the public would see, and more importantly, what they would never see. So the question isn't whether pressure existed. The question is how far that pressure reached, and how many decisions, how many delays, how many redactions were shaped not by law, but by the need to keep something from becoming visible. And this is the part people usually try to soften, but it's the part you cannot afford to misunderstand. Because when a system designed to deliver justice starts taking instructions on what to hide, the damage doesn't stay inside Washington, it spills outward into every courtroom, every investigation, every citizen who is told the law applies equally. Look at the reaction chain, not the rhetoric, the reaction. Dozens of departures across the Department of Justice, not loud, not theatrical, just quiet exits by people who understand exactly what it means when legal process becomes negotiable. Court rulings being revisited, not out of politics, but because prior assumptions about good faith are now under strain. Congress shifting votes, not because of speeches, but because of documented patterns that are increasingly hard to defend. This is not noise. This is institutional recoil. And now imagine the next phase, because it's coming. Pam Bondi on the stand, under oath, laying out dates, calls, instructions, while Donald Trump faces not accusations, but a structured narrative built from his own chain of communication. Not rumors. Not headlines. Records. And here's the moral scene people keep avoiding. Because this isn't about elites arguing with elites. This is about whether a victim, somewhere in that buried file, ever had a fair shot at the truth being told without interference. This is about whether the public was given reality or a filtered version of it. So ask yourself the only question that actually matters. If power can decide what evidence sees daylight, then what exactly is the law protecting, and who is it protecting it for? If you think this kind of breakdown matters, don't scroll past it. Like the video, leave your perspective in the comments, share it with someone who still believes systems fix themselves automatically, and subscribe, because stories like this don't end when the headlines fade. They end when people actually pay attention.